Stories about children who commit murderous acts are always shocking. While it doesn't happen very often, it's often totally impossible to believe they're capable of it. But in 2009, perhaps the cops were a bit too willing to believe it. In this shocking case from Wampum, Pennsylvania, the police falsely accused a young boy of doing something truly awful. He was then sent to jail for his whole teenage life, constantly struggling to clear his name. Pretty scary, right? How does something like that even happen? Let's dive in. It was 8:15 a.m. on a cold morning in February 2009 when 5th grader Jordan Brown and his 7-year-old stepsister rushed out of their farmhouse home to catch their school bus. They waved goodbye to Jordan's stepmother, Kenzie Hook, and hurried down the driveway. Kenzie was 8.5 months pregnant, soon expecting little Christopher Jr. to arrive. She already had 2 small daughters who also lived with them, but Jordan was really looking forward to meeting his new baby brother. It sounds like their recently blended family was going on really well. Jordan was about to move rooms so that Kenzie and little Christopher could be more comfortable upstairs. He even called Kenzie Mom. As Jordan and his sister left their home, everything about that morning seemed pretty normal. The only odd thing Jordan noticed was a big black truck parked quite close to their house. But he assumed it was there because of their normal workmen always around their rural home. Once he'd caught the bus, he thought no more about it and started his regular school day. But it turned out that from then on, nothing was going to be normal again. At about 9:15 a.m. that morning, Jordan's little stepsister, Ada Lynn, attracted the attention of some tree trimmers working outside. The little girl was sobbing and saying that she couldn't wake up her mommy. The men were very alarmed and quickly called for an ambulance and the police. When the police arrived, they found that tragically, Kenzie Hook had passed away in the downstairs bedroom. At first, they thought it was due to a medical issue, like a hemorrhage. A hemorrhage is where the blood vessel is severely damaged and causes a lot of bleeding. If a person loses too much blood, it can kill them. But after the paramedics got there, they realized Kenzie's injuries were actually due to a shotgun blast to the back of her head. That's just horrifying, and perhaps you can already see where this is going. The police were now dealing with the tragic double homicide case. Jordan and his sister were immediately pulled out of school and interviewed. Chris Brown, Jordan's father, was also questioned by them. Now, partners are usually the first suspects in these cases, but Chris was pretty quickly removed from the list of suspects as he had been at work the whole time. Tragically, he's still haunted by this, as Kenzie had asked him to stay at home with her that morning. The little family spent the rest of that awful day answering questions and trying to process what had happened. I can't even begin to imagine how that must have felt for them, and they didn't get any rest until at least 3:30 a.m. After that long, extremely stressful day, Jordan was only just falling asleep in his dad's arms when there was a loud banging at the door. The police were back, and this time they had a warrant for Jordan's arrest. They claimed that he was behind Kenzie's death. So what brought them to this conclusion? How could they think a boy had done something so terrible to someone he felt was his own mom? Well, when somebody is charged with a serious crime like that, you'd usually expect some thorough police work and extremely strong evidence, right? Well, let's take a look at the case they made against Jordan. Take a deep breath and listen close, because these events move really fast. The police insisted that Jordan waited for Janessa to exit the house and to wait on the porch for him. Jordan then ran to his bedroom upstairs to retrieve his gun, ran back to the downstairs bedroom in which Kenzie was sleeping. He removed the ammunition from the dresser on which the television that was playing sat upon, loaded the gun, and fired it into the base of her neck. He removed as much evidence as he could from the crime scene and raced outside to meet Janessa in 120 seconds. Let's all just remember that Jordan was only a 5th grader here. The actual weapon used on Kenzie, which police never honestly found a match for, was assumed to belong to Jordan. However, the little family did have plenty of weapons in the house. It sounds like having your own shotgun or rifle and learning to shoot with your family is pretty typical if you live in that area of America. Police claimed that the gun smelled recently fired, but they never even tested Jordan's hand for gun residue. A few fragments of the shotgun blast had been found on Jordan's clothing, but this was the same clothing he had worn at a turkey shoot just the week before, and a fresh shell casing was found outside the house, which they said Jordan had dropped. Remember, this family liked to shoot around their farm. As to why he would have done it, the investigators speculated that Jordan must have been jealous of the new baby and angry that he was switching bedrooms. I'm no detective, but I wouldn't say that's a very strong motive. Now, Jordan's littlest sister, Janessa, at one point claimed she had seen Jordan carrying a blanket, which looked like it was holding a rifle. And also, she had heard a loud noise about at the right time. The cops eagerly took this statement as fact. They then decided that Jordan's story, adding that he's seen a man in the truck ducking down, counted heavily against him. And that was the entire case, built against a 5th grader. Investigators had even ruled out a fair likelier suspect, Kenzie's angry ex-boyfriend, Adam Harvey. They had been in a custody battle over her 2 girls since they broke up, and Kenzie had apparently lied about who Adeline's real birth father was. Unfortunately, she had then continued to claim child support from Harvey until a paternity test proved the truth. Ouch. That last part certainly proves Adam Harvey had a strong motive, doesn't it? He also had contacts and resources to be able to set something like this up. In fact, Harvey was so enraged at Kenzie that she raised a police protection order against her ex to try and keep him at bay. Adam called my mother's and threatened to take my whole family out when he comes to town. He has threatened to hire someone to hurt me several times. Yeah, he sounds like a pretty scary guy. So why on earth did cops take Harvey's word for it when he said he had nothing to do with Kenzie's death? Especially when he and his brother had publicly argued with Kenzie and Chris in a restaurant the very night before her death, to the point that they had to be physically removed. There's even been alleged testimony that Harvey much later confessed to arranging a hit on Kenzie. Apparently this was recorded in a letter, which then very mysteriously vanished from any local police record. Even worse, it's been theorized that this is due to his military connections. That also sounds worth investigating. Maybe someone should look into that. Anyways, Adam Harvey was quickly dismissed because his father said he was at home the whole time, and there was still a bit of snow on his truck, so the police decided he hadn't done it, at least not personally. Yep, that was about as far as they investigated, and they quickly blamed Jordan for it all. I'll admit, his mugshot at first glance didn't really help. Okay, it's easy to read a lot into it, but it's one image. Nobody looks innocent in a mugshot, especially not a tired 11-year-old boy who's lost the woman he called mom just a few hours before.
I was crying in the picture. I was crying that whole night. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't know where I was at, like what was going on or anything.
But the trooper who arrested Jordan insists it's another sign of guilt.
I see somebody who just committed a murder. That's why there's a mugshot.
Naturally, Jordan's dad began doing everything he could to clear his son's name, although he didn't comment directly on the case until later. The evidence was finally exposed and everyone could see it was a little on the light side. Meanwhile, Jordan continued to serve time in juvenile prison. He'd already lost about 2 years of his life just waiting for the trial. He stayed there for another 5 years with only his father's daily visits to keep him going. Chris would drive 4 hours each day to see his son. While he was stuck in jail, Jordan did his best to stay out of trouble and keep busy. He even taught himself guitar and became a pretty good basketball player. They made repeated appeals against the conviction, and finally in 2018, someone listened. Justices said in their 2018 decision that prosecutors presented largely circumstantial and insufficient evidence. This included the trial testimony that a 20-gauge shotgun in Jordan's bedroom, which had recently been fired, was the same weapon used on Kenzie. Funnily enough, this supported an equally resembled conclusion that the weapon was not used to harm her. It was confirmed that there were no eyewitnesses, DNA, or fingerprint evidence, especially with no blood or biological material found on Jordan's clothing. After a shotgun blast, that's pretty significant. The evidence investigators gave to prosecutors was improperly gathered, mischaracterized, or fabricated. Yep, those are pretty strong words. Let's remember one more time that Jordan, a 5th grader, would have had to have done it and cleaned it up without missing anything in the space of about 120 seconds. Having taken a look at all this, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court threw out the case against Jordan. They cited that there was insufficient evidence. You think? Basically, this should have never resulted in a conviction, said Jordan's attorney. Not only did the individual defendants in this case fail all of us, but the institution of policing failed us as well. Once this was decided, Jordan was finally a free man. However, to this day, Kenzie Hook's family insists that Jordan is guilty.
Jordan loved Kenzie. Still does, and he misses her.
As this argument between the families right outside the courtroom shows, the Hook family still just won't believe Jordan should be set free.
For the second straight day, the Brown and Houck families exchanged harsh words outside the courtroom, prompting a warning from sheriff's deputies.
That's understandable, I guess, as it was probably helping them to have someone they could blame. But after all the new analysis of this case, surely you'd want the right person to be sent down for it. Kenzie's mother remains unconvinced. They never said he wasn't guilty. They were saying there just wasn't enough evidence. But as far as his guiltiness, I know he is. I'm 200% sure, no question. But now that his name is finally cleared in court, Jordan Brown is trying to be hopeful about his future.
No, I'm not angry. I mean, I think the whole like what happened and the way it happened is BS. That's like the only thing I really want people to know.
He is also suing the police department that botched the case and wants to train to be a civil rights attorney. Hopefully, he can help other young people who go through wrongful convictions as he did. All the same, this means that the sick person who really did it, or whoever arranged what happened to Kenzie that morning, is still roaming free. Let's hope that for Kenzie Hook and her baby's sake, the police will finally be able to figure out who was responsible. That brings us to the end of today's video. What do you think of this case? Was Jordan just a victim of sloppy police work, or was something more sinister going on? And what do you really think happened that morning? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below.